Greetings and welcome, I'm Ash, and this is my alpha review of Warhammer 40k Eternal Crusade. Once finished, Eternal Crusade is going to be a large-scale action MMO where 4 unique factions, the Space Marines, Chaos, Eldar and Orcs, vie for supremacy over a war-ravaged world. However, as of right now, Eternal Crusade is an objective-based third-person shooter very similar to the Battlefield franchise. It only features 2 out of the 4 factions, Space Marines and Chaos, a handful of maps, and a bunch of interesting systems that are either unfinished or hampered by poor performance. But most noteworthy is the fact that it's actually quite fun to play. Even though the maps aren't massive, there are so many players on each team that when a battle inevitably breaks out, it feels great to be a part of it. The best thing about them is how at the very beginning of a big fight, the only thing you can hear is the constant sound of bolter fire, with the occasional plasma shot that splatters someone next to you, which then slowly transitions into a more manic tone as defenses falter and melee-oriented marines pour in. It is these sort of desperate close-quarter battles that first got me interested in the Warhammer 40k universe, so I'm incredibly glad the Eternal Crusade has been able to replicate that feeling so well. The big problem here is that the performance can get so bad during big fights that you end up operating at sub 10 FPS, which as far as shooters go is unacceptably low. I would be a lot more negative about the whole performance problem if I didn't have an entire day after a hotfix patch where everything worked as the Emperor demands. Issues sprung back up tomorrow, but at least now I know they can be solved in the near future. While the performance still requires a fair bit of work, the actual gameplay of Eternal Crusade is surprisingly well done for an early alpha. There are a variety of weapons to choose from across the 5 available classes, many of which are similar but unique enough to appeal to different players. Even though I've tried and enjoyed the range classes, the real highlight of Eternal Crusade to me is the melee system, which is a bit ironic because I consider it to be quite bad right now. How it works is that you have 3 main attacks, a light but fast attack, a heavy but slow strike, and finally a defensive bash. Each of those plays a role in melee combat because the system is pretty much rock paper scissors, with light attacks countering bashes, bashes countering heavy attacks, and heavy attacks countering light attacks. While that sounds like a perfectly balanced system on paper, in reality your melee engagements are decided with the roll of a die. Let's say you start the fight off with a heavy attack and your opponent chooses a light attack. If this happens, you are dead and there is nothing you can do to save yourself while your opponent wails on your now stunned self. Which really is a shame since the melee combat in Eternal Crusade makes you feel like an actual badass space marine that can charge enemy lines, ideally from the back, and cleave through all of the enemies in an orgy of death and destruction. However, these complaints might be short-lived as the next big patch is set to bring a complete rework of the melee system, so keep that in mind. Since not every situation is favorable towards melee playstyles, I did also spend a good chunk of time playing around with the range classes, especially the default and quote-unquote boring Tactical Marine. The kill times are generally low enough that through skillful play, good aim and ideally ambush tactics you can bring down multiple unaware opponents before going down yourself. Now, I'm not sure whether this was on account of the server lag, my performance issues, or me simply being bad, but I found the spray control to be rather challenging, especially with the rapid-firing Devastator class. It's nowhere near Counter-Strike levels of recoil, but it's enough to make you pay attention where you shoot, and it's something I do appreciate seeing. Given that we are, after all, talking about Space Marines here, simply shooting your enemies isn't usually enough to bring them down for good. Once a player is killed with a small caliber weapon, he will drop down into an injured state from which he can be revived with limited health. The real trouble starts when there is an apothecary or a sorcerer behind enemy lines, as they can quickly negate any health lost, even for those downed. The solutions are about as simple as you might expect. You can either kill the medic and ensure the steady stream of healing stops, you can just finish your downed opponents, or better yet, use a weapon so powerful the enemy would need a spoon if they wanted to find the body. Just for the love of corn, don't execute people by using your E key, as the animation, while incredibly cool, takes 5+ seconds and it's about 5 times as slow as simply stabbing them once or twice. But if being a foot soldier isn't your thing, you could always hop into a vehicle and give those a try. And then promptly hop back out because they are frankly boring. It's not that they're not powerful, because they can be devastating, it's just that the entire playstyle is so one-dimensional and ordinary in a game where jetpacking marines rain from the sky. Take the Rhino for example, it is a troop transport that serves as a mobile spawning point for your squad. It's great and it's absolutely invaluable in an offensive push, but once you have it positioned, you're done with it until it inevitably dies and you just spawn a new one and rinse and repeat. The Predator tank, however, is the more problematic of the two, since for some reason it can shoot 10 shots in quick succession, which is poor against other vehicles, but oh so good when it comes to spawn camping. When your team isn't absolutely disorganized, spawn camping is easy to deal with, but if you're stuck with a bunch of newbies, and odds are you will be because Eternal Crusade just launched in early access, it is going to be the most frustrating experience ever. The maps are designed in such a way that you have two separate spawning locations that ensure you can never be pinned down in your base, but for some reason, the majority of people never stop going to the same one spawning point despite it getting shelled for the past 10 minutes. This might be a personal complaint, but I would prefer it if the defending side didn't have access to anti-infantry tanks, as it just promotes a very toxic gameplay experience. While on the topic of maps, there aren't that many of them on offer right now, but the ones we do have are decently well done variations of the standard capture and defend game mode. The reason they work well is because when you have 20 plus people per side, the battle lines become obvious and it's always easy to find your way towards the nearest scrap, so you can go and get yourself shot once again. I'd like to see more modes and obviously maps in the future, but for an early alpha I don't have many complaints as far as variety or design goes. The same thing goes for the design of the characters as well. The couple of different Space Marine and Chaos models Eternal Crusade has right now look pretty good, though once again I look forward to seeing more of them, and especially faction coloring so I can rock that Thousand Suns sorcerer look. Eternal Crusade is nowhere near its lofty MMO goals, but the objective-based shooter on offer right now is pretty good, and even though I've spent the majority of my playtime under 30 FPS, I can't say with a straight face I didn't have fun. It is very much so unfinished and unpolished, so if that's something that bothers you, then do not, under any circumstance, get it just yet, because you're simply going to drive yourself up a wall trying to get playable FPS on some rigs. The good news is that the developers have a very rapid update schedule. I've seen 2 patches during my week of playtime, and that the upcoming update is going to bring both the Eldar faction, a new and improved melee system, bunch of performance fixes, and a whole lot of other features. What I mean to say with all of this is that Eternal Crusade is not there yet, but has so much potential that I can easily see it becoming truly great in a couple of months. If you don't mind some performance issues and lack of gameplay features, then by all means jump in, but if you want a more complete experience, you might as well wait a couple of months. The game won't disappear anywhere. As it stands right now, it is really fun, but also really unfinished, so do buy with caution. Thank you guys for listening, and if you enjoyed this, or even if you didn't, please do let me know, and if you would like to see more, you can either subscribe here, or you can check out the website linked down below. That one tends to be updated more frequently. With all of that said, I hope you guys have a nice day, and I will see you soon with Firewatch. See ya!